Wow, that was violent. Hi everyone, this is Josh. Today we're going to talk about Invincible. It's an adult animated superhero series on Amazon Prime based on the comic of the same name by Robert Kirkman, who also is the creator of the show. If his name sounds familiar, it's probably because you've seen The Walking Dead, which was a super popular show at one point. It still hasn't ended for some reason, but he also wrote the comic that series is based off of. Invincible has already been renewed for a second and third season. It's received a lot of praise from critics and fans alike, and now that I've seen it, I can see why. Invincible follows Mark Grayson, a teenager whose life changes pretty dramatically after he gains superpowers passed down from his father, Omni-Man, who is the most powerful superhero on Earth. As Mark trains and develops his powers, he tries to balance his normal life with his superhero life while battling off relentless threats to Earth's safety. Part of what drew me into this show is the insane cast, which includes Steven Yeun as Mark. He was also in The Walking Dead. J.K. Simmons is the voice of Omni-Man, which is perfect. Some other voice actors involved in the project are Sandra, Walton, Goggins, Gillian Jacobs, Zazie Beetz, Ezra Miller, Mahershala Ali, Zachary, Quinto, Mark Hamill, Seth Rogen, the list goes on. Special shout out to Jeffrey Donovan from Burn Notice, whose voice is auto-tuned for his role as Machine Head, which is incredibly weird and entertaining. I think the biggest thing that hooked me though was the fact that it's an adult animated superhero series, which you don't see as often as most other inoffensive and bland PG or PG-13 live action superhero stuff. Invincible's animation style looks similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender, Naruto, or The Boondocks, and I think it looks decent. It didn't blow me away. There are certain effects and movements that look a little flat every now and again, but overall, I think it works for the source material. They definitely get the violence right. Jesus Christ. I didn't know anything about the comic before watching this show. For most of the first episode, I was scratching my head wondering why it was considered an adult animated series. Nothing adult really happens for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like, holy shit. I'm pretty desensitized to violence, I guess, but there were certain points in the show where I definitely winced a little bit. Like The Boys, another Amazon original, Invincible portrays a more realistic take on a world with superheroes who are often more cynical and inflict plenty of human casualties, whether it be advertently or inadvertently. When you're watching a Marvel film or a DC film and there's a scene where you have all these buildings collapsing and all this chaos and destruction, you hardly ever see the true brutality of any of that. Invincible has no qualms showing human carnage, whether it's debris crushing people, lasers melting skin, or skulls getting smashed. It relishes in the blood and brutality. It's part of its identity, which is very apparent by the bloody title card that's always abruptly introduced right before someone is about to say, which is pretty corny, but also pretty funny, I guess. And what makes this show stand out is how often it subverts your expectations. It has a very conventional superhero story, but there's lots of unexpected twists and turns along the way that make it exciting. The show also manages to effectively incorporate other types of genres like science fiction, mystery, and supernatural elements. In order to go into more detail about this, I need to talk spoilers, so if you don't want to hear those, then go to this point in the video so you can avoid them and hear my score. There's your warning. 3, 2, 1. The show does some very interesting stuff with the character Robot. To recap, after the Guardians of the Globe die, Cecil assigns Robot as the new leader of the group, who then recruits 5 other superheroes, including Monster Girl, to defend Earth. Monster Girl is not actually a girl, she's 24, but looks young because every time she turns into her monster form, she becomes younger. I was not at all expecting there to be a subplot where Robot goes through so much shit to transfer his consciousness into a human body so that he can try to get with Monster Girl, who he has a thing for, which is weird as fuck. And what makes it even weirder is that Robot is not actually a robot. He's a deformed human named Rudy with a massive personal fortune that he uses to keep his fragile human body alive in a high-tech chamber while he operates these powerful robots remotely. To be fair to the show, I guess it's not that weird when you think about Monster Girl and Robot and how they're similar. There's a disconnect between their consciousness and their human or not human body, which they, I guess, relate over. But that whole subplot is still genuinely bizarre and thought-provoking in a good way. The investigation with Damien Darkblood is also weird. He's this demon detective who believes that Omni-Man killed the Guardians of the Globe, which he did. He's from hell and can stay on Earth as long as he behaves and cracks cases. And I don't know what it is, but I love that concept so much. I would not mind seeing it adapted into a film or like a miniseries. I don't know, I feel like you could just get a lot of mileage out of that. The tension that builds up from this investigation as Damien Darkblood feeds clues to Debbie, Grayson, and Cecil is so exciting. He seems to be the only character in this show who isn't afraid of Omni-Man. I alluded to this earlier, but I also love the side story involving Jeffrey Donovan as Machine Head. The fight scene where Invincible and Titan face off against his 5 hired assassins was pretty great, and of course, super violent. As a side note, Invincible loses quite a bit in this show, which I can really appreciate. It makes sense since he's an amateur superhero, and it also makes it feel like no one's safe, since the main character almost dies so many times despite the fact that he's, There's only a few subplots that don't work as well. The whole side quest where Mark protects these astronauts who are on a mission to colonize Mars felt kind of random and doesn't really go anywhere, or at least not in the first season. It's hinted at the end of season 1 that the sequids, or these little parasites from Mars, will be a problem in season 2. So we'll see where it goes. I don't have too many issues with this show. I think really the biggest problem is that some parts of the story just feel a little too conventional and formulaic. More specifically, I wasn't super invested in the relationship between Mark and his girlfriend Amber. It's very reminiscent of Peter Parker and Mary Jane's romance in the Spider-Man movies. I just wish Amber had more to do than just getting pissed off at Mark for never being around, which kind of got old after a while. Another thing that bothered me that has more to do with Amazon Prime's catalog is Invincible's story feels a little too similar to The Boys, especially when you compare Homelander and Omni-Man, who are both villains with almost the same exact powers with very similar attitudes towards humanity. I want to quickly note that the first issue for Invincible was published in 2003, whereas the first issue for The Boys was published in 2006. So obviously Robert Kirkman didn't rip anything off from The Boys, and I'm not saying he plagiarized anything, but the crossover is significant enough that if you're a total layman watching the show for the first time like I was after seeing The Boys and you don't know anything about the comics, it's not going to feel like Invincible or Amazon is treading any new significant ground here. But I'm not going to hold that against the show too much. I think Amazon maybe just need to find some things a little bit more different. I did like this show quite a bit. I'm excited to see what happens in season 2 and season 3. There's also going to be a live action film adaptation, apparently. If you can stomach brutal violence and you like adult superhero stories, then definitely check this out. I'm going to give Invincible a 3.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching this review, guys. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you thought about Invincible in the comment section below. Feel free to leave a recommendation on a show, film, or subject that I should discuss next while you're down there. And of course, be sure to check out the other content on my channel and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you can know when I drop the next video. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time. Get vaccinated, stay well, and take it easy. I will see you later. Bye.